much for that. So we're moving on to the third question. So this is specifically for y'all. As cultural producers, having led arts-based programs such as Project Tuso and activist love letters, what role does your work play in the current Black Liberation Project?
Okay, so I can speak to Project Tuso. So Project Tuso was a media arts program for young people between 18 and 25, specifically for Somali youth. And the timing of it was quite important. So a lot of people have said they've run Somali youth programming in the city for 25, 30 years. But there's a very clear gap between, when you run an effective leadership program, you start to see leaders emerge. It's a natural outcome. So when you're struggling to see leaders, it tells you that someone's not running a program very effectively, right? And so myself and another really brilliant woman started thinking about what was happening around Somalis. And so a lot of my work is around looking at how the Somali diaspora is perceived in media. And an interesting thing you can do is just start typing in numbers. So 1990 plus Somali, 1991 plus Somali, 1990 into Google searches. And it paints a pretty, I think, average picture of how people perceive the Somali diaspora. Terrorists, failing in school, like all the kind of common things that we've heard through our media. It's a pretty careful, I think it's a pretty general, it's a good picture. And so at that point, what we decided to do was to run a media arts program. And I think Black communities know this. Art is a very powerful way to move political messaging very quickly. Right? It's not always about what kind of art people are using or what kind of medium people are using, but it's just, it moves things. It does something to interrupt and stop people from saying the thing that's just not true. And so we ran a program, and simultaneously we started reaching out to media organizations, CBC being a big one, Toronto Star being a big one, and pointing out the ways in which they were talking about the Somali diaspora in particular. And it was really interesting, the response we got back, which was people saying they just didn't know any better, as if an excuse is I don't know, but the harm that's committed is somehow justified by you not knowing. But you're also paid, and you have researchers on your team, and access to free archives, and a Google search, and history books, like there's just so much there. So the argument that we just don't know any better is such an interesting one, and it means we don't want to know better. It doesn't serve our need at the time. And so we brought together this really exceptional group of 10 young people, 10 Somali young people from across the city, and did a bit of a training, mostly around how do you go out and do the work around speaking to the media. And they did, and they still are. And a lot of them have taken up this project for another year to see how it goes. And I think for me that is the Black Liberation Project. It's some people organize in the streets, some people move needles in a room, and for me it's always been about figuring out how to support young Black people to do the work differently. How can I mentor? How can I give the tool that might get them to the next place? How do I challenge and push them? How is it possible for me not to be the only person interrupting? How can I keep supporting a current group of interrupters? So I think that project was a really excellent example. And really, I think one of the most heartbreaking moments for me was Abdurrahman Abdi, and the way that he was killed was captured on a Twitter video and circulated. And it was the moms speaking in Somali that were crying and asking the police officers to stop, that just, I think, did something to break my heart. And the second heartbreak was trying to explain to other Black people in this community that Somalis were also Black. That did something for me. I couldn't understand how that became the topic of conversation when a community had just witnessed this horrific thing, and also the Toronto Star didn't give a fuck. They were like, yeah, that Black man died. Like, I was like, but this, so I think those two pieces made it clear for me that I needed to do something else, and one of the something else was building some hope and some resiliency in some young people to go on and do something even better.
Well, I'm a visual artist, and as a visual artist, I'm really struck by this quote by Toni Kincaid-Bambara, in which she's talking about the role of the artist, and she says that for artists who are from marginalized communities, for artists who are from communities that are targeted, our only job, our main job, is to make revolution irresistible. Right? And that is your job. She says, as a cultural worker who's experiencing life on the margins, that is your job. And so I really take that quite seriously in my practice. You mentioned activist love letters. I've been doing that project since 2012, and it is as simple as it sounds. It gets strangers to write love letters to activists in their communities as a way of reaching out and making a connection across distance and difference, as Audre Lorde encouraged us to do. But for me, it was really, the project was really about ensuring the survival of activists. As someone who's been involved in activism for many years, I'm 41 now, I started organizing when I was 14 or 15, you know, I really, I'm aware, all too aware, how much the toll of activism can take on individuals, and how many people get burnt out, and how many people are unable to continue in the fight. And so having people write love letters to activists is my way of making sure that people are receiving the kind of love and nourishment that allows you to want to continue to fight and to continue to organize. And growing out of that project, I started drawing portraits of activists, really, really big, you know, 6 feet by 12 feet. I just did a series of 9 new portraits that are going into the Grunt Gallery in Vancouver. The show's opening in the beginning of November. I'm flying out tomorrow to install the show. And that project, too, is really about creating and drawing larger than life the lives of activists onto these canvases as a way of celebrating and honoring and revering their work and their organizing, the labor of organizing. I really want to celebrate. And all of this is part of my commitment to the movement for Black Lives, my commitment to activism, my commitment to social justice work. The only thing that I could think about doing as an artist, as a creative practitioner, is to use my art practice as a way of trying to understand and explore Black activist culture, and as a way of trying to ensure that we all get to make it, and that we all get to fight. We all get to survive into that moment when we're free, when we have self-determination, when we have liberation. And so I do that through creative practice, because my job is to make revolution irresistible.